Let me just double check the sound. All right, so we should be good now. Hey, Steve. Thanks for your question on the Studebaker. I don't know if you were, if you can't, were on the show the last couple weeks. We ran it last Sunday. Not sure when you what you've heard. What was the last update on the car? But we ran it. Okay, good, loud and clear, awesome. Yeah, so we ran the car. I got the boost situation straightened out, and well, I got the boost situation at the starting line straightened out. But give you a little background. I went over to his house before we went to the last track day. I smoked the exhaust. I smoked the intake system. No leaks were found. I pulled the wastegate off, used the leak down tester, and set the wastegate at 22 psi. Last he got a turbo rebuild. Okay, right. So we've tested it. Let me backtrack a little more then. So we've been to the track twice with the car. First time out, car would only make 2 pounds of boost on the starting line. It would make about 16 at the other end of the track. Kind of really let down with the new turbo installed, and so we kind of wrapped that up. Then I went over to his place between test sessions. We cut the oil filter apart. It was clean. Ran the valves, retorqued the head. As I was saying, I smoked the intake. I smoked the exhaust. Found no leaks. And then I pulled the wastegate, and with a leak down gauge, I set the wastegate at 22 psi. Figured we were all ready to go back to the track. I did some work on the trans brake, and I made some analog tuning on it. We go to the track. This was like 3 weeks ago, I guess, and could make 12 pounds of boost on the starting line. And the car, we had a 129 60 foot, which isn't great, but it's the best it's had in the last 2 or 3 years. Did run 899, but it wouldn't make any boost going down the track. And we made 5 runs. We had to make some adjustments. The car was over fueling. I straightened that all out. I made an adjustable rev limiter so that once it started building boost with the Holly system, I made a 2D table that would actually increase the RPM on the 2-step. Well, what I didn't take in consideration is it didn't shut off after you left the starting line. So anyway, a couple runs down the track, and we couldn't. It would only make like 16 pounds of boost going down the track, even though the wastegate was set at 22. So obviously we're down on horsepower, and that's why it didn't run any faster. Since then, we've been in contact with ATP Turbo. They said we could use the GT 4788 turbine housing with the new GTX 4718R ceramic bearing turbo we're using now. It was the same housing. So after that test session, I sent them some data. I sent them all pictures of all the stuff we had. 2 turbos laying on the ground side by side, etc., etc., etc. And where we're at right now is they want us to pressurize the intake side. Even though I smoke tested it, they said, there's no pressure. So, I mean, they're kind of alluding that something's cracked and opening up under pressure, I'm assuming. So I have not been able to get back over to Leo's to do that. I've left it in his hands to try to do that. I gave him the ideas of maybe trying to see if he knew somebody that was a plumber that would have maybe some caps they could put on the pipes so they could pressurize it and use that leak down tester and try to get 28, 30 pounds of boost in the intake track and see if it find any leaks. So ATP is currently waiting for the results of that test before they want to go any farther. So that's kind of the update where we're at with that, Steve. There's if you go back in the on the channel on the under the lives or in the playlist, there's a playlist for Tuesday Night Live. There's I think it's about 3 or 4 weeks back. There's one that has the picture of Leo's car on the thumbnail, and that one's got the video of the car going on the track. And I showed you some of the stuff on the in the Holly software and stuff if you want to see a little bit more in depth of what was going on with that. While no impact adjusting wastegate to 22. Yeah, that's the weird thing, is that the wastegate's popping off at 22 and we can't even get to there. So, that's why I was concerned that the turbine housing, where the turbine wheel goes in there, maybe there's a clearance problem or something. I don't know. I mean, that was my thought, because when we sat the two turbos side by side, obviously the original turbo was so beat up on the turbine wheel that we couldn't see if there was a shape difference. I know the intake side was completely different because I wanted to reuse his compressor shell, because it was already had the right fittings to weld on, that were welded to go to his pipe, but it wasn't even close to being correct. So we'll have to see, what happens. We were supposed to be at the track next week, but obviously we didn't get that test accomplished as of yet. And we did find out that Bradenton canceled the next two run day Sundays. Was this weekend and June 2nd. So I'll try to have some information for you guys later on the next week's show. I was out of town all weekend for Mother's Day. Steve got me started in the show already, but I just wanted to, say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there and wives and such, and hope you guys all had a wonderful weekend with family. I flew up to Ohio and spent an extended weekend with my in-laws, and we had a great time. My wife stayed up there for a week, so she's still up there. And I just got back this afternoon. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Hopefully, I haven't looked at the screen yet, but hopefully we're not having any buffering issues. We had a lot of buffering issues last week. And after the show, I ran a speed test on Xfinity, and it was Xfinity's issue. And I ran it just before we went live, and it's iffy. So hopefully we can get through tonight with no buffering. So in the shop this week, we got the we worked on clear here. Okay, good. Thanks, Steve. And Steve, just I don't know how many you missed. I did do a 4-week discussion on chassis setup, chassis dynamics, alignments and roll centers and all that stuff. I don't know if that'd be any interest to you, but you can check those out too. I'm now trying to put a little teaser on the end of each title, so it'll kind of let you know what that show is about. So from we're on episode 45 today, and I think from episode 29 up, I've got those little teasers there that'll kind of give you a glimpse of what the show was about, so that people can, if you wanted to catch something, or if you saw one of the shows and wanted to see the other ones, you know which ones they were. So just a little heads up on that. So been working on Rihana 2.0, as everybody knows. I've been talking about that for a while. Well, I'm proud that it will be delivered tomorrow, so yay. Be good to get that out and get that on the track. Hopefully we'll be putting the Smurf back together here soon and get that back to the track. Kind of jonesing for a little drag racing action. Little test and tune a couple weeks ago was fun, but some racing would be even better. So we'll see where that leads us. I got a little slideshow. I talked to T5, and he gave me the green light to go ahead and show you guys some pictures, some more pictures of the car. So we'll go ahead and do that in a little bit here. Yeah, it was kind of a short week because I was out. We left. We flew up. We flew up Saturday morning, so I only had Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But we spent. My buddy Bobby came over and gave me a hand, and we spent 2 days working on the front end of Rihana, getting the scoop and the hood and all that associated and put together and stuff. So that was challenging, to say the least. It's been a minute since I've done that, and when you're working with painted parts, it's even that much more fun because you're scared to death to overcut and and have to do some modifications or anything like that because the car's already painted. But got through it. I think it came out good. So we'll get back on Mike's Trans Am, get that thing, hopefully get that done next week. Update on the C60 Olnick race car hauler, the Alt and James vintage race car hauler. So my buddy Scott, who owns it, if you look back a couple years ago, there was a video, Will It Make It? I drove it back from Cleveland, and it wasn't in very good repair. We had a shop go over it and try to do PM maintenance on it, so that it should theoretically make the trip to Florida. And we had to have them redo it 3 times before we could actually drive the truck back. But anyway, there's a video on that if you want to check that out. So Scott and I took that to LS Fest in 22, I believe. So if you look at LS Fest, there's a video on that too when we drove it up there. But with the 366 tall deck, big block, and 5-speed Fuller manual transmission, 2-speed Ren, it probably wasn't bad with just a race car in the back, but having Scott's Corvette, which would probably be basically the same car as what Alt and James used when they raced it, but I had my 30-foot enclosed behind it with my 50 Chevy, and that proved to be a real workout for that 366. It made it no problem. Didn't really use any oil or anything. I mean, it did good. Got halfway decent fuel mileage if you consider 6 miles a gallon is halfway good. But the biggest thing was speed. It would barely run 70 on flat land. Any kind of grade, it would drop back. In any kind of mountainous area, we're going into Nashville and up to Bowling Green, and I made a route to make it the smoothest, least amount of elevation change I could, and even that way, there was many times we were rolling 40, 45 miles an hour with the hazards on and people blowing by us. So I ended up with an Allison transmission and a 8.1 Vortec big block Chevy motor we were going to put in that truck, upgraded, fuel injected, a long runner manifold. If you guys aren't familiar with the 8100 or 8.1 liter Vortec, some people call that the big block LS. It has coils on the valve cover, no distributor, 58 tooth crank trigger. I think it's got a 1-tooth cam sensor, and it's got a multi-port injection. GM used that in all the workhorse chassis for like RVs, Class A, Class C RVs, 3,500 pickup trucks, 2,500 utility and pickup trucks. Sometimes it had the 4L80 behind it. Sometimes it had the Allison. But in 03, in 02, 03, in the 3,500 with the Allison behind it, it basically made within 5 or 10 horsepower of the Duramax and within 5 or 10 horsepower of torque as the Duramax. Don't quote me, I'm just guessing off the top of my head, but it was really close numbers. It's been about 6 months since I'd looked into it. But so anyway, I picked up a motor. First, we bought a trans, and we were going to put it behind the 366. And I was kind of like, well, we're kind of, we're still not going to get the torque. We don't have the, the 366. First of all, is very, very small bore, and it's got a 4-barrel cast iron manifold with a Holley on it, so it doesn't have any runners for torque, and it's so small of an engine anyway. So let's get the 8100 and put a Holley fuel injection on it, and make some serious torque, and it'll be great. Found an engine about a year ago, tore it apart. Supposedly a good running engine, 3-spun rod bearings, 3-spun main bearings, and for whatever reason, the machine shop held it hostage, probably because they were scared of the mains, but they should have just checked it and let me know. But when they did finally get to it about a month ago, block could not be saved. So I had to find another block and blah, blah, blah. But I got that motor last week. I got it all ripped down, and this motor is pristine inside. It does have one spun rod bearing because an oil cooler line had come off, and it was GM, a dealer in South Carolina's fault, and they replaced the engine. And so the owner took the core motor back, the damaged motor, and then he sold it. And we purchased it, and it looks great. So that's going to the machine shop Thursday, and hopefully they can go ahead and get this thing knocked out, and we'll get that engine training in that truck, and that should work out real well for that. So that's about all the updates. Like I said, I was out of town, so let's go ahead and I'm going to show you some pictures of Rihana 2.0. So I just received this picture today. This was what the car looked like when T5 purchased the car to build a new race car out of it. So pretty sad looking ride. But let's see here. So this was kind of how this is, like in between, not actually when I first took possession of the car, but it's near the beginning. And at this point, the car did not have shocks and springs on it. It had pieces of tubing in there holding the car up, but it kind of got you an idea where we were at with it. I had to wire it and plumb it, and just a couple pictures. It didn't have a front chin spoiler on it or anything. The hood was never fitted to the car, so we were working on fitting the hood so we could get the scoop on. It had, you can't see in this picture, it had some goofy LED lights on the back, which turned out that we weren't able to try. We tried to get some wiring on it, but we could have done it, but it just would not have looked decent. So we aborted that. It went to a different LED. And so here's what it looks like as of today. It's got a nice chin spoiler on the front. It's on shocks and springs now. Ride head height is pretty well set. I think the springs have taken a little set from sitting on them for a couple 2-3 weeks, so I'm going to lift it up just a little bit. I had to modify the fenders because the bull horns and the width of the fender at this point, you couldn't get the front end off without really tugging and manipulating the front end, and it was already starting to crack one. So I wanted these fender pieces, so I split the fenders there and made the top half Zeus on. And we made so the scoop is mounted to the engine and the hood is mounted to the front end, and you lift the front end off around the scoop. You can see that the scoop actually goes down below the cowl piece, so we had to come around it. So, but it worked out pretty good. There's a nice front shot of the car. Came out really nice. And there's a up, looking down on it. I chose to screw the hood down to the front end because if you've ever worked on a car with a fiberglass front clip, you can't lean on it, and most of the times you can't even get the spark plugs out with the fenders on anyway. We usually use a long speed wrench. So, why not just attach the hood to the front end permanently? And that works out real well. Do pretty much all the cars that way nowadays. Just a couple more angles. LED front headlights in it. Another angle. There's the office, the main control center. So water tank. There's the MSD and ignition system, turbo 400, shifter, race pack gauges, driver's side, carbon seat, kind of typical race car stuff. Air shifted performance products shifter, they work real well. See the Braille battery up in the corner. Looking out the windshield from the driver's seat. Switch panel above. And that's what we do with the taillights. Just 2 LED strips. So on all the grudge cars anyway, and even a lot of the drag cars, regular bracket cars, I like using a reverse light for the trans brake. So when you're backing up, the reverse lights pop on. Plus, also people can see when the trans brake is released if there's ever any BS about timing or any of that kind of stuff. You can watch in the video when the reverse lights turn off. That's when the trans brake releases. So never had that on us. I've seen it on the Street Outlaws shows where they've had some bullshit about that, about people leaving early. So just that's the way we do them. And then the red lights are running lights and or brake lights. Close up of how I did the fenders so you can get it apart. And just the rear wheel quarter panel view and out the back window. Real nice car. And just that is the down angle of the driver's side. So it came out real well. And it's done. That's the good thing. I gotta just get one little bracket to put on the bottom of the scoop, and put it on scales tomorrow for final scale and ride height setting. And tomorrow night she'll go home. So that'll be real nice. Get to work on something different for a change. Yeah, for anybody that didn't, I guess this is a pretty good, see this picture here. There's a picture of the wiring. I don't think that wasn't a completed system, but how we did it, since the battery's behind this panel, there's these Deutsch connectors are all panels with plugs on the other side, so you can unplug all the wiring in this panel. Can be removed out of the car to gain access to the battery and the main power solenoid and main system fuse. So just one of the couple of things we were doing back in the day when I was doing that. There'll be, if you go back in this section, we had a wiring schematic, talk, and in that Tuesday Live, we went ahead and talked about making the wiring schematics I built for it and all that stuff. So, but that's thank you, Steve, on that. Yeah, I'm real happy the way it came out. It's been a minute since I've done chassis or body fitment on race cars. It's maybe trim a hood or something, but as far as getting the whole front end to fit, getting the doors to work properly and all that stuff, it was a lot of time was invested in that. And of course, it's probably been 13, 14 years since I did any of that on any regular basis. Not that I've ever did that that often, but when I had my other shop and we were doing chassis work. So real happy, the way it came out and all that. And I'm sure T5 is going to enjoy racing that thing. And I'll let you guys know in future episodes when we go to the track, and we'll get some, just like we do with the Smurf. I'll get some shots at the racetrack. Of course, grudge car, so can't show any times or anything like that. But show you as much of the stuff as I can on it, and we'll let you know when we are finished testing and when we're going to go to an event. So this Rihana, the Buick, is a 484 car, so it's what they call a junior 484 with a 3-speed non-lockup transmission and single 4-barrel. So that's a teammate car of Papa Smurf Jr., which if you guys have been watched the shows, it's a Monte Carlo small block stock bore center A-League car. So that car's got all the bells and whistles and what have you. And actually this year we'll know for sure, but I mean, it's definitely the fastest small block in Florida, and probably one of 3 fastest small blocks in the whole country. So I'm sure with a little bit of testing we can get Rihana up in that same type of thing where that car is one of the fastest in the area. So be good times. Can't wait to get on the track. We're a little behind schedule, but things happen. We thought the car was farther along than what it was, and there was a bit of stuff I had to redo to get straightened out. Nothing was done wrong per se, but when I'm plumbing and wiring and all that kind of stuff, I like to make sure that the car is set up so you can work on it. You have to pull these engines out every now and then to do a quick freshen or to do a repair at the track. So the last thing you want to have is plumbing where you have to disassemble the entire car, or wiring that goes all over the place and spaghetti and you don't know where to go and stuff like that. So with the way we did it, we can easily remove that panel, and I've got schematics written on where all the wiring goes and the colors and all the sorted bits. So it makes sense. If you got an issue, you can go right to the component and right to the color wire and trace it. So should do well. I don't know if Bill's on tonight. He comes in quite often. We're gonna go test his 33 Ford drive and drag. Hey Chris, how you doing? We're gonna go to Orlando since Bradenton bailed on their run day Sunday. We're gonna go to Orlando instead since they're having a run day Sunday. So we're gonna go run Bill's car Sunday. So I'll get some updates on his car for next week. We've had an issue with the TPS on his car. We've been going through a couple of them. I think I might have some idea what the issue there. Maybe the sensor's bottoming out or something. So, but Bill, we talked this afternoon. He's got the new TPS in, and all the drivability issues are gone, and so we're ready to go test. So that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be on Sunday. Like I said, we'll get the 8100 up to the machine shop Thursday or Friday. Go over to Scott's. I'm going to pull the motor out of the. Hey John, how you doing? I'm going to pull the motor out of Scott's Skylark, the 266 aluminum block Buick. We've had some issues with that thing with vibration. We had the training out and had to redo a torque converter, and I wasn't real happy the way the conversion was made. Whoever started that project, they used a standard shift flywheel with a spacer, and then an adapter to a flywheel, or to a triangle flex plate like a Chrysler would use to go to the 700R4 transmission. and it just seems like a lot of weight hanging off the back of that motor. 26-pound flywheel, 22, 24-pound torque converter on a motor that's only 266 inches to start with. And the motor just doesn't seem to have very much snap. So we're going to go ahead and pull that motor. It was an eBay motor that Scott had purchased. Supposedly only 5,000 miles. I did take the pan down during the build, and the inside of the engine did look fairly clean. And the pan was clean, so it wasn't like it was trashed or anything. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to a just lost the name of the company. Reactor. Reactor makes custom aluminum flex plate flywheels or flex plates with a steel ring. So it kind of looks like a stick shift flywheel, but it's for a torque converter. Very light. A lot of comp and super stock and stuff like that. A lot of those classes run these guys. Leo's 4100 or 4200 has one on it. So we're going to go ahead and I talked to those guys out there, and they said if we send them all the components that we have, they'll build us what we need, which would be great because right now it's a real cluster. You have to have the bolts have to be in the triangle plate before when you put the flywheel or flex plate, well, it's a flywheel, on the back of the crank, and then when you put the tranny up against it, you got to start each one with just a couple threads till you can get the trans bolted to the back of the block, and then you can tighten it. It's just very, very odd setup. So we're going to try to straighten that out and make it right. And then while we got it apart, I'll go through it and double check that everything's looking good. It's a flat tappet cam, so make sure that the guy, they broke it in properly. We don't have a cam lobe or something bad. It is a little bit of a noisy valve train on it, so I want to see what's going on there. And then we have a common problem on those motors is when they sit for a long time, they lose their oil pressure. They lose their oil prime, so that when you start it up, there's no oil pressure. And the only way to get it back is you have to take the oil pump apart. Luckily on a Buick it's external, but you can pack it full of grease, and then it'll pick the oil back up, and then it goes again. So while we have that apart, we're going to go through all that and get that all straightened out. Hey Kenny, how you doing? So we'll see how all that goes. For the guys that came in a little late, I just showed a little slideshow on Rihana 2.0. It's getting delivered tomorrow, so you'll have to go back and rewatch the beginning of this to see that. And I gave Steven an update on the 4200. So that's kind of where get you guys all caught up where we're at. We were talking about the 8100 Olnick engine. I got a new engine core for that, sending that to the machine shop. And then I was just talking about getting Scott's Buick apart and get that in process because it's going to take Reactor. They said 4 to 6 weeks to build the custom flex plate. So while they do that, then I can go ahead and go over the rest of the engine, and then when we get that back, we'll get it balanced, because that's another issue with this motor is it's got a 300 crank. That's how it got stroked from a 215 to a 266. So we don't know what they balanced it. We talked to the guy that sold all the parts, D&D machine or D&D something automotive. He does a lot of the 215 Buick stuff, and we've got receipts from the eBay seller, but the receipt, when we call him, he says, well, those parts can't go together. So rather than keep guessing and chasing vibrations and all this stuff, we're just going to take it apart, go through it. Hopefully you don't have to do anything but balance the crank and put it back together. So is that the same for the LS when they sit for a while? Oil pump. No, the LS should keep prime, but any motor that has a crank-driven oil pump, so you got your LS motors and your Ford modular motors, and there's a lot of the 4200s that way. any of those motors, you should pressurize the oil system before you start it after it's been sitting for a while. What I do in my shop is I have a 3-quart AccuSump. So I just put it in the vise, take it apart, pack it full of oil, connect it to the engine block, pressurize it, open the valve, and let it work like an AccuSump, and it pressurizes the whole engine. It puts the 3 quarts into the motor, and on a brand new build, I'll do that twice because the LS holds 6 quarts. Or if the car holds 5, engine holds 5 or whatever, you just adjust the amount of volume you're putting in the motor. But that way, everything's oiled and pressurized before you start it. Then you cap the motor and you fire it up and it goes. I'm not a believer in the pull the spark plugs out and crank it till you see oil pressure. That doesn't sit well with me, especially on a brand new build. I don't want to have a bearing scuff or something on a fresh build. But there's other ways you can do it. I've seen guys take a 5-gallon oil, 5-gallon plastic bucket, and use a oil pump they have laying around, a Chevy or Ford or whatever, and they make a plate on the top of the lid, and they bolt the pump up there and the hose down to the bottom, and then on the top of the plate they put a fitting so you can run a hose, and you just run a drill on the oil pump like you're priming a old school small block Chevy, and pressurize the motor. So that works out well. I've seen some shops will actually have a external like a Peterson oil pump, single stage oil pump, and they got it set up on a drill, and they just run that inline, a hose into the bucket and a hose into the block, and just sit there and until all the oil is transferred. But anyway, you can pressurize it. There's companies, you can probably get something on eBay or on Amazon, but I know Goodson, who is a engine machine shop parts supplier. They have all the tubing, all the tools and sanding and cutting equipment for doing engine building. They have like a pressure pot that you put the oil in. It's got a siphon tube to the bottom, and then you use shop air, and you just crank it full of air pressure, and it pushes a diaphragm, I'm assuming, down, and it pushes the oil out, and you pressurize the engine. So there's multiple ways you can do it, but obviously the only way the oil pump can be spun is via a turning the crank. I have seen somebody makes, for LS, somebody makes a priming tool that goes over the crank. So you pull your balancer off, and if you have an aftermarket timing set, which the cam gear is not part of the timing gear, it's 2-piece. We're on the stock engine, it's 1-piece. You pull that out, and then you can stick this tool in, and it's got the OD is the same as the oil pump drive, and then you can run it with a hex drive or a drill or whatever you want to do there, and you just slide all the pieces back together, put the balancer back on. But for an engine that's already together like Chris's, that would be a real pain in the butt. So Chris is local to me, so for Chris, you can come over and borrow my AccuSump, and I'll show you how to do it. But that's definitely a good question, Chris, and you definitely want to prime that motor before you start it up, because it has been sitting quite a while. Hopefully you're getting close enough to start it. That will be a great thing. I can't wait to hear that thing running again. I was telling Steven at the beginning of the show, for you guys that came in a little late, I'm going through all the old Tuesday Night Lives and kind of putting in the title a little blurb about kind of what most of the show is about. So obviously the last 10-15 shows, I've already got those all done. So like the chassis dynamic ones, they all have talking about chassis stuff after the Tuesday Night Live title. So you can go back and refer to that stuff. There's a couple with different wiring stuff. I haven't gotten back past like episode 27, So there's a bunch of them that we were doing a lot of Holly stuff. So I will get back to those and put that stuff in. So you'll be able to find that if you're doing a sniper, or a Terminator, or a HP Dominator, or data logging, or file transfer, all that stuff we've talked about over the last year. I'm gonna put headings on that stuff so you can find it. Some of the earlier shows we had a lot of discussions about braking, mass cylinder size, calipers, all that kind of stuff, pedal ratios. We had some stuff about power steering. I think we've gone over the brake stuff a couple of times. So, but yeah, I'll get those working. I'm trying to do 2 or 3 a week. So I gotta go back through and rewatch the show to get make sure I catch some of the shows are bouncing around like tonight's show. There's really no main theme for tonight. Just a introduction to Rihana that we got her done, and caught Steven up on Leo's 4200. So that's kind of where we were at with that stuff. Trying to think, I'm working on getting the video done for or the part 1 for the NASCAR. I got a lot of stuff in the box. Unfortunately, sometimes I've filmed some of this stuff months ago, and maybe it isn't what I wanted now that I'm re-looking at it. So it takes a little bit of editing to get it all straightened out. But I'm gonna try to work on getting that video out this week. I don't know if you guys saw the AMC 4-liter turbo engine build. So once I get the Cutlass out of here and get a little bit of try to get the wiring done on Dave's Chevelle, we'll get the Gremlin in here and get the engine installation done and tuning on that. I can't wait to see what that thing's going to be like with running on all 6 cylinders. It should be great. John says, I still remember sidetracking you on episode 1. Yeah, I appreciate that, John. No, I don't. I mean, this is like a bench racing, or just a thing. Except for a couple of the later shows that we've done, that I actually have a main thing. I kind of was, I would kind of hope that you guys would bring out something that I could expand on. I think that's why in the first couple shows, the brakes and the steering and stuff like that, we did quite a few shows on that, because it was like questions from the group. So I appreciate it. Don't ever think that that's not what they're talking about tonight, so I don't want to say anything. But no, say it, because we can always, no matter what, if I have something planned, it's not going to be the full show anyway. And obviously we can make the show go as long as you guys want to see it. So, but yeah, so I'm working on that. So like I said, we got that AMC video out. I'll have the NASCAR starting video out soon, and I'm getting the titles on the Tuesday Night Lives, so you guys can go back, and if you missed one, instead of just seeing all of them saying Tuesday Night Live episode blah blah, I wouldn't expect anybody to go back and rewatch all of them. If you did, thank you very much, but I wouldn't expect that. So putting a little information in the title, I think is going to help out a lot. Really had you getting into super. Oh yeah. Well, I love talking fuel injections, and I came up on Excel DFI. So anytime we get talking about Excel DFI, I can ramble on a bit about that. And once I've been working with a guy, Bob. He's got a Buick Argo, which is IMSA GTB lights, Buick V6 and that. Once I get him a little farther along, I'll try to get. I'm kind of building up some pictures and stuff that he sent me, and we'll have a discussion on that thing. It's an IR motor, so it may be interesting to you guys. Those IRs tune differently because the vacuum signals aren't very strong. So you talk about wiring. What's the best website to find wiring information? So I'm not sure, Chris. You talk about for purchasing wiring and connectors, or for just basic information on wiring. I can give you. There's a couple of places I get my supplies from. One of them is Terminal Supply Company. They are like a Granger's, but for wiring. They're a nationwide company. They have, I think, 6 or 8 warehouses throughout the country. That's usually where I purchase most of my bulk stuff. There's a place up in, I think, Maryland, Behringer's, or LSX Tuning, or lsxtune.com. When I just need some onesie twosie things, I'll buy from him. He's got a pretty good website that shows all of the connectors, and he sells either a connector by itself, or he'll sell a kit that comes with all the terminals and all the seals and all the locks that go with it. And then he also sells pigtails that are already pre-wired. So, and he has a really good assortment of all of the, not all, but a number of the Japanese automaker stuff. So he covers a lot of the Toyotas and Nissan and stuff like that. Some of the stuff that I would never know where to find that or anything. So that's a pretty good resource for. I mean, you can buy bulk from him also, but I typically don't. Where wires go, like the cut red and black wires. Unfortunately, there's no good reference for that, because those wires were probably not even factory wires. I mean, so let me step back. So if you need factory harnesses, factory wiring schematics, on old cars I use classicwiring.com. I think it's classic wiring, or classic wiring picks or something like that. They're pretty good. I have found some errors. I use Kenny, I use TXL. I don't think my level of wiring is warranted for Tefzel, but Terminal Supply does have it. And then, of course, you've got quite a few racing places, companies that sell motorsport harnesses and motorsports parts. They sell that, but I for the cars that I'm doing, and this is just my opinion, I don't do the whole heat shrink, can't think of the name of the company, but anyway, the whole heat shrink harnesses, like supercar wiring, or like Top Fuel, or even a lot of the other lower classes now are using completely heat shrunk harnesses, even the twisted stuff. Yeah, Pro Wire USA is good for Tefzel, but really, I mean, unless you're building the heat shrink harnesses, or you're doing twisted harnesses, I think TXL is almost as good. It's a little heavier, but it's cheaper, and for the harnesses I'm building, they're more than sufficient. Yeah, Ray Kemp, thank you, Kenny. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a engine harness with Ray Kemp heat shrink with Tefzel wire, you're talking, easily in the $15,000 to $30,000 range, and I don't have that clientele, and I'm kind of a jack of all trades, a master of none. So I wouldn't say that I'm a wiring pro. So for me to do that level of harness build with my abilities, I think I'd be doing the customer injustice, because I wouldn't be able to make it as well as other people do. Right, the Tesla is definitely a weight consideration. Yeah, 80 to 100 hours too, correct. So that's the whole thing. So, you know, if you're doing high-end road race cars, high-end drag cars, guys that are spending $500,000 building their car, they need that kind of harness, and job warrants it. And I'd be glad to send them to somebody that is capable of that caliper of harness. My customers are the guys that want to spend, 10, 15,000, and I think a lot of the cars that I wire, street or strip cars or track cars, the customer is still growing into the car, so to speak. So they don't have the foresight and or the funds to put all the bells and whistles in their car. However, I believe that as they go along, they'll be looking to be putting more sensors in it. I'm a data log junkie. I want to see all the sensors. So for me, doing TXL wiring and using the F6 wiring looms, yes, it's not as pretty. Yes, it's a little heavier, but I can also take the harness apart and add things in the future rather than having to build a complete new harness or putting more harnesses alongside of the original harness. I can add it to the original harness to kind of keep it all tidy. So it's kind of how I do it. Have you got into solid state PDMs at all? They're getting cheaper and easier to work with. So I've helped on some race pack PDMs. They were kind of the first ones out there with it. Yes, you are correct. They are getting cheaper and easier to work with. And my project VetHawk is definitely going to go that way. Most of the cars I'm doing right now, they're using relay boards either from like Speedwire or from Leash, where you have a potted circuit board. It's kind of like it's not like a PDM. But it's a potted board with all the relays and fuses and LEDs in it, so you can easily pinpoint what's going on. But it's heavy, it's cumbersome, and you can't. You still have to have a switch of some sort to turn it on and off. Where with the PDMs and a Holly, using Dominator, why wouldn't you do it? Because you can literally do math channels for everything. Or if you're doing a Hall Tech or Fuel Tech or AEM, whatever systems you're using, especially when you have multiple units. Leash makes good cheap parts. Yes, they do. Their relay boards are very affordable and work very well. But yeah, I definitely want to get into some PDMs because you can just do so much more stuff with it. My VetHawk it's going to be, the main build for that car is going to be Optima Series, Ultimate Street Car. But I want to possibly do some driving drags. I want to do definitely going to autocross the crap out of it. Going to do some track days with it. I just want to make it just the ultimate street car. So with the PDMs, I can do a lot of things with cooling systems and traction controls and all these things, and make a simple switch panel that operates many things. What PDM are you looking at for the VetHawk? So I'm not sure, Kenny, if you've seen Devin at I'm going to say HRS, but it's not. It's HCR, I think, Motorsports. He's in South Carolina or North Carolina. He builds a lot of the Tesla wiring harnesses, does mainly drag cars and driving drags. He's got a new one out, and I don't remember the name, but if you go to his YouTube channel, which is, I think it's, you can look up HCR or Devin. His last name is not coming to me right now. Or look on my channel at my favorites. Yeah. Uh, he's got a new one. It looks pretty good, and it's supposed to be relatively affordable. And again, if you buy it from him, he already lays out the Excel spreadsheets for, so you can make it easy to pinpoint what you're doing. He'll tell you how to set it up and all that if you tell him what you're already looking for. So that makes it pretty nice that he does all that. But yeah, I think it was a couple weeks ago I looked at that, so I shouldn't say anything because I really don't remember. But I believe they were around $2,000, and they were like 430 amp, 440 amp, 430 amp, and like 20 amp circuits, and they all could be switched to pulse width and all that. And they had 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12 switch on the panel. Kenny has a bunch of features and hardware. Would be interested how you do it. Yeah, so how you like it. Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit till I'm that far. I'm still going to build roll cage and floors and all that stuff yet, but I'm definitely going to look into that, and maybe I might get a car I'll install it on before I do mine. But I'm definitely looking into getting those. The guy I helped with the race pack unit was a number of years ago, but I mean, you could actually, you flipped a switch on the dash to purge the nitrous, and the PDM controlled all that. You didn't have to, do any of it. It controlled the heater. It controlled the purge. So you just preset what pressure you wanted, and it would sit there and purge like normal. And then as it got closer to the final percentage, it actually started going off like a machine gun, because it, every time it shuts off, the pressure would come back up. So it all the way down. That was kind of a goofy sound effect. Sorry. But you can do your bottle heaters that way, where you're using your bottle line pressure, so you don't have to worry about the heater going, overcooking the bottle or whatever. You can set the range you want the heater to turn on and off with, so it's trouble free. Especially since almost everybody's now using Milwaukee 18-volt batteries for the bottle heaters. I had a M12 on my last bottle heater, and it lasted for considerably, and the blankets got hot quick with that. So, but yeah, there's just so many things you can do with it. On my car, I'm going to do paddle shift with the transmission, so you can switch it. I'll be able to switch it in and out of manual shift to auto shift. All your AC controls, all that stuff. You can have literally 6 or 8 push button, milliamp switch panel up on the roll bar, and you can run the whole car off of that, all your lights and everything, because everything can be multi-use, and it looks really interesting. And I mean, let's face it, why car manifold, which is basically the same thing, is because it eliminates a lot of wiring in the car. So that's the other thing that looking very interesting, and you don't have a huge relay pack and all that stuff. It all can be done with a single unit. Solid state relays built into the unit, and you can pull stuff, turning stuff on and off, and what have you. So really good, especially if you're going to do trans controllers, diff controller, coolers, just whatever you want. It's endless. Installing ECU master PDM on my Coyote car. Custom coded max switch off for keyboard to act as a display. Dash page next, and accumulator drain. It sees no RPM. Wild what you can do and geek out. Yes, you're right. And you can just, it's amazing what you can do. So are you still running a stock processor in your Coyote car, or are you running an aftermarket ECU in that? I don't know if you're still running a sealed crate engine class, or you're just running with the stock with the Coyote engine in it. Um, but yeah, I mean, all those systems will communicate with any ECU. A lot of them are all now starting to get into the CAN bus stuff too, so you can CAN bus from the ECU to the master PDM. So really cool what you can do with that stuff. Kind of gets raises it kind of raises when you look at it from yes, rules say we have to use the stock ECUs, right? So you're picking it off the stock ECU. Awesome. Yeah, and that's the part for like you, Kenny, and for myself when we're talking with customers / friends about doing their cars, is that we have to educate them because they're not aware of all these components and stuff that you can do, and even though it looks up front expensive, in the long run it really isn't. On the Rihana car, we're using the MSD grid for timing retard, and we're using an AMS 2000 for nitrous control, and we're using the race pack V300 for data recording, and we got a coil and distributor, belt drive, and wires and all this stuff that in hindsight I could have put a Holley HP and an IO box in there and ran the ignition, ran the nitrous control, ran the timing control, did the data recording all with one unit, and it could still be fuel carbureted. It doesn't have to be fuel injected, but we'd have one box doing all the controls, one data log to look at, and it would be way easier than having to take data from 3 different control units, weeding through the information, and then making the right adjustments in each box, making sure they uploaded properly, all the things that can go wrong, especially when you're at a racetrack and you're in a hurry. But unfortunately, on Rihana, T already owned all the components, so it was kind of a waste to go backwards. Goes all brand new stuff, and he already owned it. But that's the kind of thing that I got to use my head and explain to people that you can. There's a lot of stuff with these new ECUs that you can do. It doesn't necessarily have to be the ECU, and because then the car would have been coil unplugged, so it wouldn't have no distributor to worry about. You could do individual timing very easy. It would just make everything very clean and very nice and easy. You wouldn't have to worry about caps burning out and all that stuff, contactors in the middle and stuff. Crazy to see how advanced it's gotten in 20 years. Yeah, you're right. Back in your I remember when we met and you're in your Hondatas and I forget the little dashes that you used to run in the cars, and when you used to come over and rent my dyno. Crazy what we've evolved into. But technology, look at this stuff. Doing live shows on YouTube and all this other crazy stuff that I would have never thought would have been a thing. But that's kind of where we're going, and those will be things we'll bring up in future shows. We'll see where we go. Okay, I'll stop seeing where we are. You're right. Yeah, it's crazy where we can go with this stuff. But anyway, it's getting 8 o'clock. I think we're gonna wrap this deal up. Sorry I didn't have any real technical stuff planned for tonight, but we had a good discussion and got everybody caught up on everything. If you guys, there is something you guys would like to see in a future live, put it in the comments. I get notifications and answer those. I try to answer them within 20 minutes, so when they get dropped. So unless it's in the middle of the night or something, but yeah, we'll get something going for next week. Now that I'll be here all week. We will do a segment on Bill's car from the track test. John says it's all the same. Pick an industrial application, right? Everything has gone automated, animated, whatever. I mean, you know, the stuff they're doing in OE cars doesn't throw me. The autonomous driving, the emergency braking, that's good because half the people that drive are on their damn phones. So that's one of those things that, you know, you got to be careful. You got to drive very defensively nowadays, and so that emergency braking does help. But yeah, it is really cool, all the stuff. And Dave's Chevelle would have been a prime example for a PDM with all the power door locks and power windows and stereo and exhaust cutouts and air conditioning and all the components we put in that thing. That would have been a useful job for that, but we've already got that one way too far gone to go back. Yeah, program logic control. You're correct. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to pull a plug on the show tonight. I hope you guys had a good time. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Hope you guys had a good Mother's Day with mothers, wives, family, loved ones, whatever. It's always good. The women never get the credit they deserve. I know my wife doesn't. To allow me to do all the things I've done in my life, I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have her doing everything in the background. She's been quite a good person and my best friend and all that. So you guys have a good week. John, Chris, Kenny, Stephen, if you're still on, and all the people that are watching that didn't get on the chat. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you again next Tuesday. So here we go.